So you remember the Clean Plate Club and hate the idea of wasting food? Well, I used to be the same. So listen on to find out why I radically changed my thoughts around food waste. So welcome to Joyful Eating, episode 198. And today we're talking about why I love food waste. Although I probably should have an asterisk there. I don't love all food waste. There's just one specific type of food waste that I do love. But before we get into the specifics of my food waste thoughts. The best part I had, so recently made like pretty much every weekend I make ice cream. Like I bought my Irishman an ice cream machine maker for his birthday last year or the year before. And pretty much since then, pretty much every weekend, I make some sort of ice cream. Anyway, I hadn't made vanilla, just plain vanilla in such a long time. So I decided to make as what I called super vanilla. So I doubled the amount of, and I use like vanilla bean powder. So it's like ground up vanilla beans, which is like more economical than using whole beans. And plus, then you don't have to like scrape the seeds and do all the stuff, and you still get that amazing vanilla flavor. But yeah, so I made this batch, but I doubled the amount of vanilla that I used. And and then when I had it, I just had this one scoop of super vanilla, and that's all I had with it. I didn't no extras. And often I'll like sprinkle on different things, but it's like, no, it's just vanilla for me today. And it was just, oh, it was so good. It's like, yeah, just like that. Like, there's a reason why vanilla is such a classic flavor. Like it's so beautiful and fragrant and sweet, and it just like melted on my mouth. And I really savored it and focused on the enjoying it, and it was so satisfying. So that was my best bite that I wanted to share with you today. So our plan today is first I was just going to share with you my food waste journey, like the story behind my how I've been on a journey with food waste. And then we're going to talk about this idea of benevolent food waste. So why I actually love wasting food in certain situations. And then why this matters, like why it's important, and then also like how to actually go about adopting this. And actually, if you are a member of the Clean Plate Club, how to rebel against that, which is actually really fun and subversive. And then I have a bonus tip to share with you as well. So basically, my food waste history is, I was brought up to clean my plate, and we like actually got punished. Like you had to sit at the table until you finished your plate. Like it was full on, like most people. And there was, still starving children in Africa. Rah, rah, rah. So you eating your food was going to help save them in some crazy way. Um, so I grew up with that, and so I was always, in that habit of just cleaning my plate and not really even thinking about, did I need this? Did I want this? Like, was I full? It was just like you would just clean your plate. And of course, I was always wondering, why is food such a struggle for me? Like, why is it so hard to keep my weight under control? And but of course, over time, when I really learned to this skill of listening to my body, which is about 5 years ago, like that changed everything. And what one of the things that I did was learning this skill was, rather than just using the plate and when the plate was empty to decide that that was time to stop eating, I started checking with my body and learning to tune into, oh, actually, am I satisfied? Like, is that enough? And sometimes, yeah, like only halfway through the meal, like that would be enough. And like normally I would have just finished it, but like learning that skill of listening to my body, I was forced with this, like confronting my clean plate club membership. And what I decided, and what I'm so thankful that I decided, was that I would much rather have a healthy relationship with food and feel good in my body and leave food on my plate willy-nilly all the time if need be, than be part of this clean plate club who was struggling. And so I just made that choice over time, and I haven't looked back. And definitely, like in coaching people in learning to listen to their bodies, one of the biggest struggles is people that have been raised in that clean plate environment mentality. Like they really struggle with the food waste, and leaving food behind is like, it's against their religion kind of thing. And it really blocks their progress, and it slows down their progress and makes it harder for them to really dial in and listen to our bodies. So having experienced it for myself and then seeing how other people struggle with it, like I can like it's just more and more clear to me that this food waste narrative, how unhelpful it is, and the clean place narrative, how unhelpful it is. And and the thing is, like, the thing to remember is like us finishing our plate doesn't help those starving children in Africa. Us finishing out, like once the food's served out, it doesn't, it's like it doesn't. if it goes into the compost bin, or if it goes into the rubbish bin, or it goes into our bodies, like it's if it's more food than we need, it's wasted either way. So that's how I see food waste, and that's why I have come to love what, like, facetiously calling wasting food, is because I yeah, it's actually better for me and for the environment and for the future if I'm in a body that's a smaller body, it needs less food. So therefore, I'm actually using less resources over the long term, right? So we're thinking about it from a long term perspective. So that's the long story. So when I talk about like benevolent food waste, so what exactly is that? And what I mean by that is just like being willing to throw food out for the greater good and for the longer term the bigger picture. So because as I just alluded to, like when you're in a bigger body, it actually does take more resources, it takes more calories to keep that bigger body alive every day. And so we like someone who weighs, a guy who weighs, oh, I don't know, whatever, like a big guy, his energy requirement is significantly higher than someone who's, a short, petite person. And so by us overeating, like in this effort to like avoid wasting food and being in a bigger body, we're actually, that means that over time, like we actually need more resources to keep ourselves alive than we actually would if we were in a smaller body. And so by wasting food in the moment and getting to this place where we are like at the weight that is good for us, then we actually save food in the long run. Like we actually avoid future food waste by wasting food now. And this is can be bit hard to get your head around, but it's true. Like when we are able to when we aren't in a bit when our bodies are smaller, they need less food going forward. So it actually we waste food in the short term for future gain. And so that's it's for the greater good. And so why this matters is uh, because if we're just always finishing our plate, we're like it perpetuates that overeating cycle, and it also perpetuates this like relationship with our body where we're just ignoring our bodies and we're using external circumstances to determine how much we're eating. And so it's important to turn that around and to tune into our bodies and give our bodies let our bodies guide us on how much to eat, so that we have that healthy relationship with our body, we have that healthy relationship with food, and it has that knock-on effect to everything. So it really does make being a naturally healthy person so much easier when we are able to let go of the food waste. So this is like I'm such a huge proponent of this. And so how do we go about rebelling from the clean plate club and actually breaking up with that and changing your mindset around food waste and seeing how you feel it? And I think it's just like like anything, this is my year of experiments. So like just bringing an experimental mindset to it, right? So you don't have to decide now that I'm going to break up with the clean plate forever, like, but just go, okay, well, I wonder what it would be like if I did. And so you can just decide to experiment and play around with your mindset and just a thought that other like people that I've worked with found really helpful is just reminding yourself that my body's not a rubbish bin, and this if this food is more than I need, it's wasted whether I eat it or whether I throw it in the trash. And like I'm not a trash can, and that can be a helpful reframe to go, oh yeah, actually, I value my body, I value me, and that's actually more important than this temporary food waste. And another one is thought that can be helpful is just to remind yourself that actually every time I overeat, like that's actually wasting food now, but it's wasting food in the future as well. And reframing overeating as being food waste rather than throwing out food as the only way that we're wasting food. And just reminding yourself that like this is who you want to be. Like it's so much better when we don't overeat, like because was then our weight's not a problem, but also we feel better in our bodies and we feel better later on. So that's how we do it. Just a decision to experiment and like play around with leaving food. And you might like to like as a baby step just start just setting that intention. I'm just going to leave one bite like on my plate just to practice how that feels and get into the habit of coaching yourself around that. And you can baby step it. Like you don't have to start leaving half your plate behind if you don't want to. And of course, there will be times when then I do finish my plate. Like it's like there's times where the amount of food on my plate isn't enough and I do go back for more. Like totally let yourself do that. It's not like about that you should always be leaving food behind, but it's just like when you do know that you've had enough and there's still food there, we want to avoid that overeating. And then my bonus tips for you in terms of food waste is like, of course, like I'm not suggesting that like I love food waste and that like I want to maximize food waste. Like I'm always still looking for ways to minimize the food that I do waste. So one thing that one of my clients used to do was she was someone who uh and this isn't me, but someone like I know a lot of people who like they would save their best bites to last on their plate. And so then of course, like if they're full and their best bites are still there, they want to finish those best bites. So one thing to experiment with is eating your best bites sooner in the meal, like maybe eating your best bites first. So then when you get to the end and you know you're full, like the food that you are leaving behind isn't your favorite stuff. Like that's definitely a bonus tip to experiment with. And then another is then this is what I do all the time is like rather than throwing the food out when I know that I've had enough, like particularly at lunchtime, I do this all the time. If I when I get to that point where I've had enough and there's still lunch there, I just put my bowl or my plate in the fridge, and then when I go to like uh, cook dinner, I'll like pull it out so it can warm up like warm it up. And sometimes I'll actually warm it up, but sometimes I'll just put it on the table with my dinner and then I'll eat it with my dinner and like have it as like, oh, I've just got this little, interesting appetizer here to have. Like, and so that can be fun. And another thing I do is I just keep a jar in the fridge or a container, and so if it is only like a couple of bites, I'll just add to call it my random bites jar, like just keep adding into the random bites jar. And then sometimes, like there've been whole meals where I've accumulated enough random bites from my various, meals that I've left food behind on, where it's like it's pretty much been a whole meal in itself. So yeah, just because we're not like we're not finishing our plate doesn't mean that we necessarily need to throw all this food out into the rubbish and that it actually does get wasted. And then the other option, of course, is if this is freaking you out of like the idea of like leaving the clean plate club and wasting food really does make you feel a bit eek, then you don't have to do that, of course. Like you don't have to learn to love food waste like I have, there is another option. And that option is just being more intentional with your serving sizes so that when you do get to the end of your plate, it's like that you've served yourself less. So then, yeah, okay, if you do need more, you go back, but you're less likely to need more food. So you can just intentionally serve yourself smaller portions, and then you don't have to worry about the food wasting, and you can keep having your clean plate if you love your clean plate. I did have one client who was like, "Jules, I love my clean plate so much. It feels so satisfying." And I was like, "Great, then let's just make it easier for you to have that clean plate without overdoing it." So that's my tips for you this week. So just yeah, I invite you to experiment. Like try leaving a few bites behind, or just try serving yourself less, and knowing that you can always go back for more if you want. So, yeah, have a fantastic week. Just bringing questions around your thoughts around food waste, and I will catch you next week.